being recorded and or transcribed.
It's like we're recording.
Just give me 1 second. I need to close my door. I'm getting an echo. Thank you, Julian. All right, I'd like to call to order the West Haven Subcommittee of the MARB. Today is September 23rd, and the time is 10:34. We do have a quorum. I'm Kimberly Kennison. I'm the designee for Secretary McCaw, and I do not think that Christine is with me at the moment. The first item on the agenda for us to discuss is the minutes of July the 20th regular meeting, and I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
Lovelace moved,
Thank you, Bob.
and Tom Hamilton will second.
Thank you, Tom. Any discussion? I don't hear any discussion. Julian, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno,
Quorum.
Sorry, yes.
and Mr. Egan.
Actually, I don't think I was at that meeting. So I'm just gonna abstain for that time.
Okay.
That's correct.
You were at the meeting.
Oh,
Pat.
okay, then I'll vote there.
Ms. Kennison.
Yes.
And has Ms. Shaw joined the meeting? While I see her there.
Yeah.
You. Okay,
There we go.
great, thank you. That's everyone.
Thank you, Christine. The minutes have been approved for July the 20th. The next item on the agenda is review and discussion of the fiscal year 2021 memorandum of agreement and the open items related to that memorandum. The Secretary mentioned at the September 9th MARB meeting that there were several number of items from that memorandum that the city that remains open, and therefore they're not in compliance with that memorandum. And so that memorandum provides them with $4 million of restructuring funds, but there is a condition that they must be in compliance with the requirements, and there are a number of open items. So the most recent revenue and expense projections from the city at the last meeting indicated that without the restructuring funds, the city would have a deficit for fiscal year 2021. So that is important to note. The OPM staff has worked with the city to try to facilitate and bring the city into compliance. Julian today has provided us with a summary of the status report of those open items in the meeting packet today. And we're prepared to go through those items, and he had provided also a brief summary to make folks on this call and the subcommittee aware that the Secretary has sent a letter to the city on September the 17th requesting a written plan to bring the city into compliance with the Memorandum of Understanding and to submit that in advance to the subcommittee. And to this point, date, we have not received that plan. So what I would like to do is speak with the city and hear their feedback, and also have Julian walk through the open items that we have, that he has pulled together for us. Mayor, would you like to
Yeah, Kim, real quick, were we copied on that letter from Secretary McCaw to the city?
no, you were not.
All right, could you forward a copy of that to the city?
We'll have to, not at this very moment, ask following up.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Not while we're in this meeting, I will send it as a follow-up.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah,
Okay.
after.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mayor, would you like to comment, or shall we go through the open items? And, or Frank, would you like to?
I will just briefly comment. The letter, unfortunately, I still have not located. In fact, I called Julian this morning, he gave me the time and the author, if you will, because it wasn't Secretary McCall, somebody else had sent it out, and Andre. I don't believe Frank has found his. Michael Mylone did find his, I don't know, Michael, this morning, or?
I received it on Friday and didn't realize it until this morning.
He did not
when I went through my
realize it.
packet, But I got it Friday.
We apologize, because normally when we do get a letter like that, we would have responded. We're not trying to ignore it or ignore any of it, so I just wanted to make sure that the MARB members know that. So that's the reason, because I looked through everything, even the, spam, everything else, and I still have not been able to find that letter. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You do have it now because Julian forwarded it to you, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Everybody that should have it has the letter
Yes.
Yes.
at the city. Okay. Thank you. And in the packet today, we have a listing of those MOA items. Julian, could you please walk us through it, and then as we go through that, we'll let the city comment on those open items.
Sure thing. So this was the attachment, following the minutes and the meeting materials, and it's just laid out with each individual requirement within the MOA, the current status, and then a few brief notes just to provide a little bit of the context where it seemed helpful. So the first requirement had to do with the payment of the fee to MARB for FY21 that was completed pretty much right away after the execution of the MOA. And then there was also a requirement that OPM provide to the city some detail on how the fees from prior years and up to the current date have been utilized. And so that report was provided to the city in February, and then an updated version in May. And then getting into some of the more substantive requirements, there was a requirement that the city, revise and update a plan for addressing a number of recommendations that were included in a report by Bloom Shapiro back in 2018 that had to do with the utilization of the Munis financial system that has been delayed for, most recently delayed due to some changes in staffing and the ADP project, which pulled people away. So over the last probably 6 to 12 months, has been put on hold as a result of those issues.
Not only that,
We've still not reached a point where training has begun. Do you want me to stop after each one?
You may as well, because Frank is ready to comment on it.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were just gonna read through. I just wanted to say that the other reason that hasn't happened yet is I reached out to Tyler Technology a couple months ago. They are not doing any on-site training because of the pandemic. They would do Zoom meeting training, but I have conducted systems training myself in the past, and doing it remotely never worked out well. So once we can start getting them back on site, we will get them here, and the goal is to do a train-the-trainer session so that anything dealing with purchasing, we'll have one individual be able to take a detailed training class and then be able to train the employees as needed on an ongoing basis, so that Munis wouldn't have to keep coming back. Similarly for other areas of Munis. So that's where we are with that. Before
proceed or continue with that. On that report also included, we reference it here as Munis training, but it included as sort of a precursor to the rollout of actual training was kind of an updating and sort of solidifying of policies and procedures within the financial functions related to the various Munis modules, for example, procurement, budgeting, and so forth. And so that's sort of an important step kind of underlying this whole goal or this whole project. And if you could just, hit the status of that aspect of it, that would be helpful as well.
Sure. So I did reach out to Tyler Tech. I asked them to do a 2-hour Zoom with myself, the purchasing agent, Board of Education, and walk us through, as if we had never seen the system before, take us through, in their opinion, the best practices from the start to the end of the purchasing AP cycle. So creating a requisition, walk us all the way through that, all the way up through when we cut the check and make payment to accounts payable. And so I sent that to them on Monday, and I'm waiting to hear back from them on that. We did also have, and Michael has something else he'd like to add.
I've been involved in this project too, especially since Doug Davis, who's the procurement manager, has been greatly involved in the accounts payable process, and so hasn't been able to devote the time we had originally hoped to. One of the things that we worked on is the development of a procedures manual. Doug and Frank had outlined it sort of, and then basically what I tried to do is to put the meat on the bones. We have now a basic preliminary step-by-step procedure manual, but just for the Munis process. So what we intend to do when we have this meeting with Munis is, and basically it followed the model that was developed by Bloom Shapiro with some changes that Frank and Doug had recommended. Anyway, we think we're at a stage where at least we have enough information now to at least begin a preliminary process of introducing the employees to the Munis training module. And the hope is that we can do some introductory stuff with them in anticipation of actually having us go live with the training. We've lost a lot of time, and we know we'll probably lose a little bit more time. But what we want to do is at least do this right. It was done about 3 years ago, and unfortunately it was an abysmal failure for a lot of reasons. Anyway, concurrent with this, what we were hoping to do is to do all the procedures information and all of the manuals and everything else first, and then go to the training. Because there's so much material that has to be developed at the front end in terms of the other procedural manuals for accounts payable. Frank and Doug and I have decided that we can do these things on parallel tracks. So we're not going to let all of this procedural development hold up the training. We'll be moving on that very slowly, but we will be moving on it, and if we can actually get Munis to get involved and come down here and train, we'll be able to accelerate it. But at least initially we have the procedures manual, which we hope to get out to the staff and start at least educating them on what they have to do, and then possibly doing some preliminary training as a background so that we don't lose another month or so while we're waiting for Munis to arrive. Additionally, what I've been doing with Frank is we've been working, and Doug, we've been working with a purchasing consultant who is on staff with the South Central Connecticut Regional Council of Governments. And she's helped us develop a lot of the documents that we either needed revised or we needed to write completely new documents, specifically relating to the bidding procedures and the request for proposal procedures. As we've gotten more into this project, we find that we've got to go back deeper and further into the history of the whole process and make changes, because unless we do, we're still going to be compromising the Munis accounting system somewhat by having a process preceding this that doesn't really apply to our needs. So anyway, we have a young lady who has been a purchasing agent for a long time, and she's a consultant with Scrog, and she's working on the updating of our bid documents, our RFP documents, our RFQ documents, and also the associated requirements of documents that have to be included, and also eventually she'll work with the Corporation Council to ensure that the contract document that should be in the specifications is written in the form that it's supposed to be written in. So that's a long answer to a short question, but yeah, there are a lot of balls in the air, and it's taken significantly longer because each time we move forward, we find more things that we didn't anticipate that have to be addressed. But with the help of the consultant, hopefully making Doug Davis's availability more frequent in the near future, the assistance from Munis and whatever I can do to get out of the way, hopefully this will advance. And I will be participating with Frank and the staff in the meeting with Munis also, so that I can help out in any way I can.
Kim, this is Bob White. I've got a
Yes, Bob.
procedural question. As we were listening to all this detail, what is going to be asked of the MARB at the end of it? The fiscal year for which this appropriation was allocated is long past. They're going to be going through an audit. Are we going to be asked to
Yes.
withhold everything, allow something to go forward? Is that not our function? Is it yours? I'm just trying to process this, because this is an awful lot of detail. And just don't know what to do with it. I know Tom has to leave.
Understand. So, Bob, very similar to as we have every single year, we wait until the end of the audit to make the determination of how the city has fared out, and keep them always with the notion that we want to keep them aligned with their fund balance. When they have performed greater than what was expected, we have not provided the full amount of funding. So what happens then is the secretary makes that final decision. So, and that decision is made based on the results of the audit. When we get to the draft level, we have then a conversation with Frank. He then provides us with the draft of the statement, and then we have that final conversation. Then a secretary then will make the final decision as to the dollars. Right now, slotted is the $4 million. However, nothing will be released, even if it would end up being a receivable at the end of the year, if the compliance is not met with the requirements of this contract.
So it is.
Unless the compliance is impossible.
Okay, are you saying that every year, the money has not been released until after the audit for that year?
Yes,
Okay.
under Secretary McCaw, that has been the style.
Okay. And what you're saying is that it'll be booked as a receivable, but there's going to be an asterisk next to it, because as we know, it's not been completed.
Well, they will not book the $4 million receivable. At this moment, the receivable is not known of what the funding is from the state till we find out what their preliminary performance is. The result of the audit.
Nothing is going to be asked of us. We're just, this is for our information.
We will make you aware. We always do.
Well, no, you do. Okay. I just want to know what we were going to do with this information. It's quite key.
Can I just to tie it back to the statute, is that which Mr. White mentioned, or I think alluded to, is that the secretary makes the call on the final distribution of the funds, but it's with the, I'm going to get the exact words, I don't have them in front of me, but it's what sort of the advice and input from the board,
Yeah.
right? And so this is kind of a lead-in to determining what that final distribution amount will be, and kind of determining what is feasible in terms of timelines for getting some of these items back on track, and what kind of commitments the city can make to hitting those timelines.
Correct. And, to actually giving us a report, we're not looking for a report out. Today, we're getting a report out so that the MARB members are aware of the items that are still outstanding. These have continued to be still outstanding for, a number of meetings, and, more than a year. And I know that we've gone through a pandemic and things, but now we're coming to the end and we need some concrete, when are we going to get that information? So that was the reason for Secretary McCaw's letter, and again, we'll be looking for the feedback from the mayor.
Ms. Kinnison, can I make a comment?
Yes. Yes, Chief.
And it just seems to me that I remember in the Bill Shapiro report, and the issues that you're speaking about are intricate issues to running any type of business. You're talking about purchasing, you're talking about just very, very rudimentary but necessary issues to run any type of business. And for the city to take this long, I find it really disturbing. And I understand it was a pandemic, but I'm sure there were, that there were ways to deal with this. Maybe they weren't thought of, but maybe they should have been. It just seems to me that if somebody was giving me $4 million,
That's just four. This was many years with the same item still on the agenda. I just want to lose sight of that.
right, so this has been going on for quite a long time, and I would think that basic business functions to run any company, whether it's a city or an independent company, that these are issues that should have been dealt with first. You're talking about purchasing, so how many, you're talking about very, very rudimentary issues that should be dealt with, and should have been dealt with over the years, certainly before now, and to have it as a open issue still, I find that, just for me, I just find that an issue.
And Stephen, some of the reasons in that area is we have staff that are stepping down and doing the work of other folks. And as those vacancies have not been filled and or they're delayed being filled, and when the positions are asked that we need to get the functions done, there is always a delay to get the positions filled. So that will be one of the items that, is in the MOA for us to discuss as well.
Thank you.
While they got some really great news as far as, their bond rating has fared well, and that's great news, the underlying infrastructure and the back office financial side of it still needs to be addressed. Now, I know that I've had some conversations with the mayor, and some of these items have been addressed. We do not have a report to know that they've been addressed. That's really where we're at. Somebody was going to ask me a question.
Yeah, I actually have a question for the city, but just kind of asking you what you just said. So you've had conversations with the city, some of these things have been addressed, but the committee has not been made aware of it by some type of report.
I'm looking for a report. We've asked for reports from the city, and we have not received them.
Okay. So Mike, I got a question. You said that you guys have taken on a consultant from South Central COG. When was that young lady acquired as a consultant?
I believe it was about 3 weeks ago, Steve. And then we have a meeting with her today. Oh, it's Pat, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Okay, Pat Egan. I think it was about 3 weeks ago, and then we have a meeting with her today because we want to consider bringing her on board in more of a capacity where she can help us. We have very limited allotment of her time from Scrug, And so I'm gonna meet with her, and then I'm gonna talk to Frank and Doug, and they'll advise me as to whether we can continue to use her in a more active, everyday capacity, so that we can get this contract part of this project done and over with, the bidding and RFQ.
Okay, and Julian, just for a little bit of history on this particular item, the Bloom Shapiro report was issued when in 2018?
It was December,
September,
I think.
October timeframe, somewhere around there, fall.
Okay, so we're basically 3 years out from that report being issued, right?
Right.
Okay, and was there, the information that we're looking for and the issues of administrating and other type of operational implementation on things, what was the May 1st of 2021, wasn't the first date, right, that we set for timeline?
No, that's when we put it actually in the MOA. So this is a reference to the MOA of when the delivery date was today. By Tom.
So we got this in September 2018, and we said that it's May 1st, 2021 to accomplish this?
No.
No.
So there's a couple that kind of fall into this category where there has been we'll call them a project or a requirement, and a plan of execution is prepared or in some cases just outlined, and then due to vacancies or whatever the case may be, pandemic, the timelines are not hit. And so for using this example, this May 1st date was set. The intent was to kind of recalibrate. With the original plan, we could not execute the original plan because of these vacancies. Please, provide us a recalibration of how this is going to roll out, given where we are as of today.
Each one is different.
It would have been in last year's MOA. But I think originally, I don't want to try to speak from memory, but I think there was a general timeline to do the preliminary work, and then kind of a broad timeline for when training would be, when a training schedule would be detailed, and then the training would follow from that. And obviously that didn't pan out.
Would that have been, and so this encompasses a few items, were any of these items, like the target date, when things were supposed to be accomplished, or plan submitted to us, or whatever, sometime in 2019?
I don't know.
In 2018. I would think that we should be going more than a year, if not less than that, past the issue date, right?
Right, so I think this, given that, just trying to reconstruct the timing, because this report, the Bloom Shapiro report, would have been around the time that an MOA for that first MOA was probably already either finalized or close to being finalized. So this item, if I remember correctly, would have appeared first in last year's MOA. So this is the one we're looking at today is the second that it appeared in. Yeah.
And can
But
I,
also, Pat, just to bring it back to content, is that we also had conversations with them about what the priorities are. And in those priorities, it was decided that we need to make sure that we address other items prior to addressing this item, so they could have been working on that. But when we received the HR report and there were alarming items within that HR report, progress was focused towards that, as well as the payroll system had to be, a new payroll system was put into play as well. So there was a prioritization, not saying that they all are important, they are.
can I
When was
add,
the HR report issued?
And that's the next item on, Board of Ed.
November of 2019.
Okay, so a year after the Bloom Shapiro report.
Correct.
can I add a little bit of background to this as well? This is Michael. I started here in West Haven, I think in October of 18, and I believe the Bloom Shapiro report was issued in December of that year. And at the time, Frank's predecessor was finance director for about 6 or 8 weeks, and I wasn't involved in this, but I remember the history of it, and it was made clear to him that this was a very high priority that needed to be implemented. And he brought Munis here to do the training and met with them. And I guess I used the word earlier, abysmal failure, and it was simply because the whole thing was not well planned or orchestrated, and I don't think that at the time the finance director fully understood the expectations of the city, but more importantly, the level of skill set that the staff had been exposed to, and as a result, whatever training was done was of basically no value. And I think that from that experience, we've all learned, and that's why we tried to be a little more cautious going forward and have the staff better prepared for what they're going to be involved in. But there also needs to be a lot more engagement on the part of the city to encourage, promote, and continue to sustain whatever is introduced to this group, because it's going to be a significant change, as we learned 3 years ago, and nobody was ready to adapt to it. The other thing I wanted to mention is you had asked about I think we mentioned the ADP project, and not to make excuses, but one of the challenges is when the procurement manager position was finally created and the expectation was that he could take this project and start to lead it, he got diverted to the ADP project, which lasted about 9 months. So that was the first hit we took. We tried to take some baby steps along the way, but we weren't too successful without having him to take the lead. And so that was one derailment that I can at least reference. And again, not to make excuses, but just to give you the history.
But also for the board members, we have been at every subcommittee, we do bring this up, and we have talked about this all along the way. So we have been kept about, but now as you do a look back, it looks like a long period of time. We have been aware of this, and we've discussed this at many meetings. But it is time to get a report and find out and get this recalibrated and get the deliverables as when this is going to occur, because of our great works and the funding that we've provided to this city. If we leave and think that it's only about the financial side of it, and we leave the infrastructure not being addressed, then we haven't done our job. So it is important that we all are aware that we bring this back. There are also audit findings that are relative to this, and that's our reason for bringing it to the forefront again today. And now, when we get to the point that folks are going to be looking for money to balance the budget and close the end of the year, that will not happen without compliance.
Well, clearly it has happened without complaint, because this was from October of 2018, and even...
Keep saying October.
A year out from there, which I'm sure we at meetings discussed certain things we wanted to address, and timelines before. We don't have to have something in a memorandum of agreement to say our expectations are X, right?
The funding was not released unless it met the terms of the agreement. I want you to know that.
Sure. I think what it is that we're looking at right now, at least in discussing this, is that let's focus on the Munis training, because Tyler couldn't come in. Well, the way things are going, if they have held back prior to even last year, or whatever, when things were kind of, I guess, for the turn of the year, when things were loosening up a little bit, now they kind of tanked back down due to the vaccine and its shortfalls with the Delta variant and whatnot. But to me that this really hasn't been addressed. It's nice that they grabbed someone from South Central Prague, but that was only 3 weeks ago to contact, and it seems like they're really gonna maybe try and start getting some, a little more time with this person, coming up soon, but, I mean, this is, May 1st was the timeline that this expectation was set, and that's in its most generous light, and that's 5 months ago. It's 5 months ago.
And what is it?
So, it's just unacceptable, and this is the first, so it's not delayed, okay? So, and then it's just, they're out of compliance, right? It's not delayed, it's out of compliance. And, you know, it just doesn't seem to me like, you know, there's a priority to, you know, to get it done when we use possibly and hopefully and eventually as words without hard dates. Maybe that's part of the problem. But, you know, it's out of compliance, it's 5 months old in its most generous light, and that's being extraordinarily generous. And, you know, there's always a reason. This is delayed because we had this thing come up. This thing got delayed because we had this thing come up.
Understand that. So, that segues into what I think we're going to hear is about the open positions, and some of these items haven't been completed because there's still vacancy in open positions. I don't think that it's going to benefit us to continue to walk through this report unless other folks feel differently. We do have the time slotted, till 12 o'clock, but I think it's important that we then have the city provide us with their recalibration of when we're going to get these items completed. I'm looking to the board members on your thoughts, unless you wish to continue to go through this.
No, I think that is a very good suggestion, Kim. By my comments, I'm in no way meant to undercut the seriousness of the goals that are here. You are absolutely correct that this is, developing the infrastructure is important going forward, and a lot of progress has been made. And I do understand to some extent what the city is saying, given the hiring and the sequencing, and that's water over the dam. I think you're absolutely correct to bring this to a head, and I think the next step is to get a report if in fact some stuff has been done and they're just missing a written report. Let's do that, and then certainly the key is a timeline. And I think at that point, the MARB can process it in a way that we can, make comments to the secretary that make some sense. I think, based on a couple of comments by board members, the city should have the notion that there's not a lot of happy campers here. So.
Yes.
Sorry.
Christine.
I would just add that I agree with the firm stance taken on this. I know that in my time serving as designee on behalf of the Treasury, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of moving parts about areas of interest, and one of them, I think most folks know, I've consistently asked about, the progress toward, and this is outside of the scope of the Shapiro study, but progress on a more efficient management of the pension funds, recognizing that the pension liabilities are an important part of the town's fiscal profile. So I echo the comments made by other MARB members of the necessity and the urgency to resolve these issues. I also feel like, and I just want to make clear, it's my understanding that the Secretary has discretion on the distribution of the restructuring fund. I'm wondering if, and it's a discussion that I think has been put on the table, which we invite with the mayor and Frank on the line. What are the practical, realistic expectations for executing on these deliverables. I'd like to have a candid conversation around that. I'd also like to offer, and again, I don't think it's within the discretion of MARB, but we're talking about either they get the 4 million or they don't. It's a zero-sum option as it's been presented. If West Haven makes substantial progress, for example, if we set hard and fast deadlines, and 60% of those deadlines are met, would there be an option to provide a pro rata distribution of those restructuring funds, the exercise of discretion in a way that provides incentive rather than a sanction? So I just put that on the table. I always like to encourage compliance and not punish when I perform. So just put that out there.
Agree. We can go through all this hard work of this board and working with the city as a partnership to, get to that point. We've always wanted to continue to work with them as a partnership, but again, we are getting to the end, and there are many items that still need to be addressed. So I have been told that many of them have been addressed. We need to get a report so then we can then reevaluate. Thank you, Christine. Stephen, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I want to say, I certainly, Melissa McCall, I just have nothing but respect for her, so whatever her decisions are going forward, I certainly would support and respect. But what I'm hearing when I read through these reports, and I do read through the reports, it just seems to me that a lot of these positions and a lot of the issues are middle management positions. So, especially with the pandemic, there just seems to me that there's an awful lot of middle management that has been displaced. I just don't, maybe I'm oversimplifying, and sometimes I do, the difficulty in filling some of these positions, and I think there has to be a greater attempt made to do that. And I also think that the MARB cannot, and I really, really agree with Christine, I think we have to have an absolute drop dead deadline for these things to be completed. We've been playing, with numerous reports, whether it was the Board of Education and some of the things that needed to be done there, whether it was the financial standings, the pension liability is a whole separate issue. So there's a lot of balls in the air, and I understand that, but I think the city, this is good management, right? I mean, events take place, things happen, and you have to be able to shake and move a little bit. And I would like to hear from the city specifically as they look at these requests. Tell me how much more time you need, but give me a drop dead deadline and hit the deadline.
Can I just, maybe I'm confused here. The date here that I'm looking at on May 1st is part of a memorandum of agreement that we have with the city?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the drop dead date, Steve, just for clarification. That's the date of the agreement we have with the city. To get our funds. That ultimately, I
agree, but historically we keep moving it. When they don't get it,
correct. I guess shame on us for doing that, okay? But we have an agreement. Any deviation of that agreement has to be basically voted on by the MARB. I'm not quite sure the secretary has as much fluid decision-making and distributing funds as we've kind of discussed. But we have a date, and we've had dates before, and you're right, shame on us, because it's kind of like, it's not really a date, so then nothing happens with it. And we're not talking about a month ago. This date here is 5 months ago.
Understand, Pat. So
I know you understand, but what I'm saying is this, is that this is the money of the taxpayer of the state of Connecticut. The reason why the city of West Haven has a surplus is because we overfunded them with that money, which I necessarily don't agree with, but, and now we're in this year, and we still don't have the things that we required through the agreement to get the 4 million. Okay, so right now they're not in compliance with the memorandum of agreement. They're out of compliance as of May 1st. at least, and that's only looking at this portion. And, as this is going down the road, and, everybody, or certain people, I would say, would have the big eyes thinking that, hey, if we don't, if the city doesn't take money from us over the next couple of years, that it's all over. Well, there's a few criteria, and one of them is certainly a confidence of the board to vote to say it's over. And, until such time that it's, I would say, many years out, that they don't want deficits or have to tap into that reserve. I don't think personally our oversight is going to be over for, quite a long time from now, to look at that, because leaving, anybody, I don't care what town it is, with an extra, $7, $8, $9, $10 million, to sit there and say that everybody's all set now is a little bit irresponsible if we were to do that. But I do want to say that these dates are hard dates, they're part of an agreement, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. And I think the accolades that get rained down, and some are certainly appropriate, there's been progress, I agree with that, but the progress has been slow, it's been painful, and I see a lot of red flags that, certainly raise a question in my mind, as opposed to that, in the sense of kind of thought processes of how issues are approached, and getting away from the culture that has long preceded, the current administration as far as any type of financial decisions.
Okay. Any other comments about this agenda item and the listing? I think that we could move forward and wait unless the city has anything that they would like to comment on. I'm looking for the secretary to receive the plan from the city, and I think that it would be useful for us to have that in hand, than continuing to hash through the individual detailed items, as we have with many meetings. The next item that I have is other business on the agenda, and that is some of the other business that has been noted in prior meetings. I'm looking for an update as far as the plan on your fiscal year 21 audit, and when is that plan to occur, and draft reports and all that good stuff, Frank.
So the auditors have made an initial visit to the city. That was last month. We are in the process of trying to complete closing the books, getting everything pulled together. I'll be very candid in that, time being spent by individuals trying to take care of the AP process, because we've had to delay hiring an AP individual. So, that in turn puts the audit in jeopardy for an on-time delivery. There were, I believe, 8 items that the assistant finance director had said were potential showstoppers. So we're working through those. Happy to say at least the third-party information that has been delayed in previous years, we have received, so we should not expect any delays from that perspective. I have not heard from the auditors as to when they will be back on site to continue their process, but I know Bob, the assistant finance director, has been in touch with them, so we can certainly, or I can certainly provide a written report to you, Ms. Kempson.
Thank you, Frank. If at least have an update, if you could have an update for our next subcommittee, would be helpful.
Okay.
I would just be prepared in case it comes up at the MARB as well. All right, thank you on that. The next item that we're looking for would be a plan on the ARPA funds, and when that looks to be created and shared, or at least an overview of how you plan to utilize those funds. The MARB is looking for that. Mayor?
Yes, no, I am aware of that. We have worked on it. We have like a skeleton plan put together, and I will continue to be working on it, and I know there's an October 31st deadline for submission. Again, it's going to be a work in progress, but, more than a skeleton one. I do want to just back up for a second if we could, and that's on the AP position. And the reason I want to back up on it is because we absolutely need this position. And as we've explained at least the last meeting, there is issues with the union, although the members said no. So how did we proceed? That's what I'm looking for, because we needed that position like yesterday. And just so you're aware, all the other positions that were created in finance are filled. Personnel director is on board the third week in October. So again, the only other position is the administrative one, and Frank is going to be interviewing, so that will be finished. But the AP position is my biggest concern right now, because Frank is absolutely right. We want our audit on time, but without the AP position being filled, and what we wanted, credentials in that position, and that's where the tug of war comes between the city and the union. So if we can get some guidance here, because I want to move quickly on this. And
I think we provided that, Mayor, I think we provided that guidance at the last meeting. And I think that, Frank, you were requesting I think you were going to actually use the minutes as leverage. However, we had board members at the last meeting that brought to your attention that you don't need that as leverage. You can go forward and fill that position. And that was, I believe, a president of one of the unions.
Okay.
Yes, it was Sal Luciano.
You have a video. You have a video of that.
We absolutely do. So we're just going to go forward then with this and put a new job description out and hire someone. I'm good with that.
Mayor, you had the ability to do that prior to the MARB saying that you had the ability to do that.
Well, see, we were told no, so that's the hard thing, when we're told no. So that's why I want to move forward with the new job credentials and that type of thing.
Yes, you, so has the position has not been posted?
Attorney Tiernan is walking across the room.
Yeah, so,
I always thought the mayor had the ability to hire people in positions, right? I mean,
Yes, that's what we were told.
yeah, I always thought that we were an advisory, and an oversight. That was our job, was advising and overseeing, not necessarily telling you how to run your business. So, I would think if you needed to hire somebody, I think you always have that ability at least in my view.
I don't think it was raised that we said that the MARB needs to be like that.
No, we did not.
Okay. Can I just get some clarification? Is this like an entry-level position?
This was already all discussed and resolved at the last
I'm gonna
meeting.
discuss it again, okay, Kim? So, this is an entry-level position?
No.
No, this is not. They're not asking for an entry-level position.
Okay, so this is being hired from within the bargaining unit?
I don't know if anyone within, well,
let me stop everybody. This is Lee Tiernan. There is a union involved. I'm anticipating
I want
agreements.
everybody to be clear. The people that stop anybody is the chair.
Okay. Madam Chair, since this is a potential litigation issue, I would ask that we stop discussion on this. We will move forward with it pursuant to the instructions of the board, but that does not mean that the union will agree with the positions that the board came up with at the last meeting. And I don't think we should discuss it further, since it is definitely will be the subject of agreements and litigation.
All right, we will pass on this. We have given them what they have needed and our thoughts about what the city needs to have proper professional accounts payable person that can handle that function for that city. I do have one question, Mayor. You mentioned that the Human Resources Position Director was filled and that the person will be on in 3 weeks.
Yes, and
Are
that,
you able to share with us any background on this person?
I can give you, so, it's a female, I hate to call it, she is a female, and she has over 25 years of HR experience, she has a bachelor's degree, and she has a master's degree. And so she is highly credentialed. She will be starting the third week in October. She has she's had an offer letter. She's accepted the offer. And I'm looking forward to this because this is a key position, as we all know. And we are shaping up the HR generalist position. That will be advertised either today or tomorrow. And I did put all this just so everyone knows, because we do an update on the MOA every month. It is due by the 1st of the month. So I did have this in the past MOA that was due September 1st, and we will be updating the next one by October 1st and sending it to Julian.
All right.
Mayor, there's just one thing, does she have HR experience in municipal government?
I don't have a resume.
Director's level?
I don't think HR in the municipal government, but she does have a lot of HR experience. I don't have a resume right in front of me. She has extensive experience in HR, and her references have been checked and all of that.
Okay. Does she have HR experience dealing with organized labor and union?
Yes.
With contracts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
you're welcome.
I have no other open, other business items to bring to this board's attention. Does anybody else? Julian, did we miss anything that we want to bring up?
Can I just make a suggestion on the plans for the ARPA funding? Is it, I think it would be helpful to the MARB, well, it would be helpful to the city as well, if we could get some insight on kind of how the city plans on engaging with, with the community on prioritizing the use of the funds, small business community, nonprofits, residents, and so forth, given the scope of what the funding is intended to address, and that just kind of how the city will go about kind of getting that kind of feedback and input from the community at large as part of the process of making those allocations.
Yes, and we
Is that
are.
a mandate under ARPA that they have to engage the community, Julia?
No, but it would seem, given the magnitude of the funding, I think it would be
Prudent.
helpful for the MARB to be aware of how that's playing out.
We fully intend on engaging the community. Again, I don't know how all of it's going to end up at this point in time, but the way we want to do it is through at least 2 public hearings, so that we can hear from the community, and to your point, not-for-profit and businesses that have suffered, that we put a plan together for them. So yes, we're going to do that. Plus, we want to address some of the needs, of course, of the city with this funding as well. So what I would like offline, Julian, is maybe a little guidance on the county funds. I know a lot more about the ARPA funds now than I do the county funds, and we don't want to misspend anything or have the wrong use. So offline, if we could have a little bit of a discussion, I would appreciate that.
We can schedule a meeting, Mayor.
That'd be great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So as of today, though, the ARPA funds have been allocated for anything?
Correct. We have received the first payment on the ARPA funds of $9.1 million, and that is in an interest-bearing account. But no, we have not allocated anything as of yet, but we will.
Okay, yeah, I would think.
All right, that ends the other business that we wanted to address. Can I get a motion to adjourn today?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
There's not a contract, it's an option to purchase, I will send it to you now.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
We shut everything off first.